Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Wes Hodquist. Happy New Year to everybody. We are coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. And Wes, the Packers will be taking on the Chicago Bears in the Week 18 regular season finale on Sunday at Lambeau Field. We'll kind of get to more of the specifics on the Bears in a minute. But the big story from Wednesday here at 1265 Lombardi Avenue was that there's finally kind of been an answer on the Jair Alexander knee injury situation. He had to go in for another procedure. Sounded like it was just a scope cleanup type of thing, but his situation with his knee is he is most likely out for the rest of the season now. The Packers not going to have him practice. He won't be trying to come back at this point to play in the playoffs. So, it's disappointing, certainly, because I think all of us were hoping somewhere along the line that Jair Alexander, the Packers' best cornerback, would be back on the field at some point. But it's a reality that the team has been dealing with him not playing for quite a while. So now it's moving forward with the guys you have.
Yeah, it is for sure, Mike. And as you said, I mean, it's not just that Jair Alexander is their best cornerback. He's one of their best players. When he's healthy and he's right, we saw it in 2022. He was able to finally come back from that shoulder injury, plays at an all-pro level. But the last two seasons, whether it was the back, the shoulder, or now the knee, there's just been this never-ending chorus, it feels like, of ailments that have kind of plagued him. And it's caused the Packers to really have to shift gears. So, yeah, I feel bad for Green Bay and where they're at right now and how they got to try to figure this thing out. But at the same time, as Carrington Valentine said in the locker room, a lot of guys had talked about, I mean, they've been through this. They know what's going to be required of them. They know the domino effect that is going to come from that. I think the bigger thing now for Green Bay is figuring out exactly what happens with the safety room, because there's such a domino effect with these safeties that also affect what happens at cornerback. Javon Bullard right now, he's still limited with the ankle, but he's the one healthy guy, quote unquote, next to Xavier McKinney.
Right.
You still don't have Evan Williams out with the quadricep injury. Then obviously Zane Anderson gets the concussion on Sunday. So there's been so many different things that when we always talk about offensive line play, right? You like to have your best starting five. You like to have them playing together. The secondary hasn't really been able to do that for one reason or another. And the domino effect of moving around Keisean Nixon or Bullard or having to go in and out with Valentine and also Eric Stokes. Green Bay knows what the challenges and dangers that lie ahead against some of these other NFC teams are with their offensive passing games. And these guys are going to have to be up for that challenge.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And here's what I hope. Obviously, you hope that everybody can be healthy and available. But looking ahead to next week when the playoffs start and when everything is on the line, this is what I hope for the Packers in the secondary, that whatever group can practice next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, you hope that that is the group that can play the entire game in the playoff game. Because what we've seen when this Packers secondary has shown itself to be the most vulnerable is when guys have gone down during a game,
right,
and then the musical chairs start and you have guys having to shift around and play different positions. And Jeff Hafley is still trying to make all the calls and everything, but he's got guys in spots where they weren't practicing during the week because you have your plan, you practice that plan. It's not that they don't know these other positions.
Yeah.
Because obviously they can play them during the game, but there's a big difference between knowing what to do and practicing the actual game plan at those spots. And we saw the game at Detroit. Evan Williams went down early in the game. Javon Bullard went down late in the game. And there was this constant shuffling around as far as figuring things out in the back end, and it made it really tough on the defense. Last week, the Packers defensively in the first quarter were pretty darn good. But then Zane Anderson goes down.
Right.
The domino effect starts. Javon Bullard, who had just come back from a 2-week absence, wasn't 100%, hadn't been practicing full, and let alone practicing the position he was then forced to play when Anderson went down. So my hope for this Packers secondary that has to move on without Jair Alexander for the rest of the way here is that whoever's practicing next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, hopefully they can play together for the entire game in the playoffs, because then I think that gives the Packers their best chance to win.
And I give a lot of kudos and respect to what Javon Bullard has done this season, because he's been put in some tough spots.
Yes.
Because he starts the year as the starting safety next to Xavier McKinney. They start the adjustment where he moves down into the slot because, one, they needed Keisean Nixon outside, but it also got Evan Williams on the field. And Evan Williams kind of proved himself, along with Bullard, as being one of their top 11 guys. And there's a lot of years, Mike, where the Packers wouldn't have been blessed to have a Xavier McKinney on their roster. Very possibly you could have had two rookies starting back there on the
Absolutely.
with how Green Bay had to approach this thing. So, Bullard has had to kind of pinball back and forth. I think, and fans can say whatever they want. I know at some point I think they were bickering at him to the point that Keisean just shut down his Twitter, but Keisean Nixon, I think, has had an extraordinary season for what has been asked of him. He's still a top-notch kickoff returner, which is one of the big reasons, getting the contract last year. But he's taken his game to another level as a cornerback. Last year, he was the nickel. And this year, as he's told us countless times now, he's been a perimeter cornerback. He was a perimeter cornerback with the Raiders, but he just hasn't had the reps in game. And now, back-to-back seasons now, I think over 800 defensive snaps each of those seasons. The Packers desperately needed a guy like that not only can step up in the face of injuries, but also allow Jeff Hafley to move around those pieces, whether he's inside or outside.
I agree with you 100% on Keisean Nixon. I put in one of the headlines of one of the columns, Insider Inbox columns that I wrote last week. I think Keisean Nixon has had a vastly underrated season in terms of what he has contributed with bouncing back and forth between boundary corner, slot corner, proving for a number of games that he can be this team's number one corner when asked to be, when Jair Alexander is not available. And yes, you play cornerback in the NFL, guess what? You're going to get beat. You're going to give up completions. You might get flagged for DPI once in a while. It's part of the life of an NFL cornerback, right? But what Keisean Nixon has done, I agree with you 100% that he has taken his game to another level. And I think Keisean Nixon is probably the biggest reason the Packers secondary has been able to withstand so many games without Jair Alexander, and things haven't just completely fallen apart. As frustrating as things were in the back end against Sam Darnold, you have to remember this defense also just shut out the New Orleans Saints on Monday night, a little over a week ago. So we've seen what this defense can do. I think Nixon has been and will continue to be a big part of it, and I appreciate you bringing him up because he deserves more recognition than he has gotten to this point in the season.
I think a lot about Tramon Williams too. I mean, there were a lot of years. Tramon Williams is a future Packers Hall of Famer, did get to a Pro Bowl during his career, but there were a lot of years where Tramon wasn't even considered like the QB or the CB1. Right? There were a lot of years where it was, obviously you go back to the Charles Woodson days, and then Al Harris, and then you have a guy like Casey Hayward come in as a rookie and have 6 interceptions. Sam Shields is a top corner. But what was the thing about Tramon that made him so special was he was always available. He was always out there, and he did it at a high level. And there's something about that where with Keisean Nixon, former undrafted free agent as well, a guy that, he had some injuries coming out of college, he had some stuff going on, wasn't able to probably show the speed that he really truly has, that speed that I thought was evident when he was able to recover on that pass to Jordan Addison that he was able to break up in the end zone.
Right.
That's what you need to navigate a season. And again, we'll see how far the Packers can run this thing, but I don't think they're in the position they are today without Keisean.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Well, turning the page to the Bears, Chicago is coming into Lambeau Field on Sunday. I remember, Wes, you and I, we have those conversations at the end of our shows about other results from around the league. And when Washington beat Chicago on the Hail Mary, I remember both of us sitting here talking like, well, Chicago was 4-2. They were one play away from getting to 5-2 and really riding high with their rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams, and everything he was doing. And we sat here and said, well, let's see how the Bears respond to an absolutely devastating loss. The season went completely off the rails after the Hail Mary. The Bears have not won a game since. They have lost 10 straight now. Obviously, the head coach was replaced along the way, and the Bears are obviously going to be into a full-fledged coaching search in the offseason. And on the flip side of the streak things, Matt LaFleur is 11-0 against the Chicago Bears, trying to go 12-0. Has not lost to Chicago since taking over as the head coach of the Packers. So I'm just going to throw this. I'm going to throw this at you right away. What are the keys to victory for the Packers to give the Bears their 11th straight loss and to win their 12th consecutive game in this rivalry? Sorry, I threw it at you, Fat.
No. There's a lot that goes into this answer. It's not hey, I can't come up with one. It's because you don't want to be flippant about this.
Right.
Because the Bears, as Matt LaFleur said, the Bears are an NFL team. They're hungry. If you watch the film, they're still hungry. But it's not a good football team. It just isn't. And there's no other way you can slice it. I feel like at times their defense has performed. Caleb Williams has done an extraordinary job protecting the football this season.
Yep.
But the change-off and the trade-off to that is he's been sacked 67 times. They got all these receivers. They've gotten them opportunities, but not necessarily explosives. I think DeAndre Swift, I was really high on that earlier this season. I'm not as high on it now. I just don't think he's quite had the season he probably wanted or that the Bears wanted. So when you ask me what the key to victory this is, for me, it comes back to Caleb Williams, because I'm not saying you need to turn it over, because he may protect it, but you can't allow him to get into the rhythm that he got into in that first game at Soldier Field, because he was feeling it. And when a guy like that's that talented and feels that much comfort within the pocket, within his arms, and being able to make those throws, he's going to make plays. The Packers can't allow that to happen. This game, yeah, I know there's the continuum, the contingencies out there about whether it's a 6 seed or the 7 seed. Packers will welcome anybody they have to face. Obviously, the road would be easier if they're the 6. But that being said, that's not why Green Bay needs to win this game. They need to win this game because they need to have that feeling of, okay, we need to get back to where we were at mentally after the Saints game.
Right.
Where we can be dominant, we can impose our will on teams, and we can be able to extract whatever we need to extract from an opponent that has lost 10 in a row. You don't want to give them that victory. And as I also mentioned in our Insider Inbox column this week, how Packers handled things in 21, what happened at the end of the 22 season, you can't tell me that wasn't the thing that started to light the fire with the Lions. They ended both of those seasons feeling good about themselves.
Yeah.
I see no reason to give Chicago any semblance, any room for hope.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. When I look at the Bears, what they've done, you see glimpses of what the Bears are capable of. The second half on Thanksgiving against the Lions, right, where they almost pulled it off, and then that ended up being the game that got Matt Eberflus dismissed because they botched the clock management at the end of the game. You look even last Thursday night against the Seattle Seahawks. The Bears defense showed up and played.
Yeah.
They were, they took a Seattle offense. The Seattle Seahawks had a ton to play for in that game. And they couldn't move the football. They couldn't score points against the Bears in Chicago last Thursday night. There are times that either side of the ball for Chicago can shows what it's capable of and can give you problems. But when I look back at the first game, Chicago and Green Bay at Soldier Field, I think one of the biggest reasons the Bears stayed in that game is because they surprised the Packers with Caleb Williams and the running ability.
Yep.
It's the way he scrambled around and the way he also ran designed runs, the zone read stuff. I think that that got the Packers on their heels a little bit, and that element to Chicago's offense in that game was a huge factor in the Bears putting themselves in a position to win it at the end with the field goal that Green Bay blocked. I think you bottle up Caleb Williams in whatever way is necessary, and you don't let him run around, and those off schedule type of plays or the design quarterback runs. If the Packers shut those down, I think Green Bay's defense will be just fine against Caleb Williams on Sunday. On the offensive side of things, just stay balanced. No need to get crazy. I think Green Bay, this is a game where I expect the Packers to really get their mojo back on offense. I believe that. How things are going to play out in terms of certain guys on the injury report who may or may not play, I don't know. I don't really want to get into all that. I think this is a game where you reestablish clean, solid execution on the offensive side of the ball that you try to take into the playoffs.
Did you see what Caleb Jones' longest pass of the season was? Have you looked at that at all?
No.
47 yards. That's it. They have a couple in the 40s, but yeah, nothing more than 47 yards, which is interesting because you look at a lot of squads. There's that 170-yard right off the bat score, those sort of things. They've really struggled with the explosives. DeAndre Swift has a 56-yard rushing touchdown.
And he had the 40-yarder in Chicago against the Packers.
Against Green Bay, which may be probably one of the longer runs that Green Bay's given up all season.
It might be the longest.
It might be the longest. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. I just think that Caleb Williams, he is their best player, and he's a young player, and he's got a lot ahead of him. I think he's going to be a headache for the NFC North for years to come. I think this has been a really challenging year.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you're hearing him talk this week when he was asked about what you want from the next head coach and what you want from... he talked about he wants to be coached. He wants to be challenged. And in some ways, I just feel like this year kind of felt like a continuation of his time at USC. Not to say he didn't develop there. He certainly did. But I just look at Caleb Williams and everything he offers. And there was a reason why he was the top quarterback over Daniels and over all these other, Bo Nix and these young guys, Penix, that have been out there. And it just feels like it's been kind of stuck in neutral for them. Now, Green Bay needs to make sure for at least one more day that's still the case.
Yeah, and we'll see where things go in the future with the Bears. It feels to me, now this is just me talking, when they drafted Justin Fields, it felt like the Bears had a decent offensive line in front of Justin Fields, but then he didn't have any game-breaking type of weapons to get the ball to. So then as they were trying to evolve things, and now they've made the transition to Caleb Williams, they focused on getting offensive weapons. They signed DJ Moore to a long-term, lucrative contract. They drafted Rome Odunze in the first round. You add DeAndre Swift to the backfield, all these things. But then the offensive line kind of falls apart, and so Caleb Williams is constantly under pressure, and he's getting sacked a ton and all this. And so on that kind of the whole group just hasn't really been put together offensively for the Bears, and that's what they're going to look to do moving forward with Williams and whoever the next head coach is.
And styles make fights. I mean, that's why maybe Chicago pushed them as much as they did, because Green Bay was really struggling with their pass rush earlier this season. It's been sort of the spigot that's gone on and off for them throughout the course of the year. Obviously wasn't good enough last week in Minnesota. So pressure is going to be paramount, and trying to find ways to not only be smart about how you approach him, but also making sure that he just doesn't get into a rhythm offensively.
All right, I'll take care of some sponsor business here, Wes, and then we need to talk playoff picture. So SiriusXM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right, well, as outlined on our last show, the Packers' playoff picture is that they can get either the 6 seed or the 7 seed. If the Packers win and Washington loses, the Packers will get the 6. If Washington wins or if the Packers lose, Green Bay will be the 7. If Green Bay is the 7, the Packers know they would be going to Philadelphia because Philadelphia is locked into the 2 seed. If the Packers get the 6, there's the possibility of playing either the Los Angeles Rams or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Packers know that would be on the road, of course, as a wild card team. I'm curious, did you see, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong if I didn't see this right, but did I see that the Rams are not playing Matthew Stafford this week?
Yeah.
See, that's really interesting.
Jimmy Garoppolo's starting.
Jimmy Garoppolo is going to start for the Rams. And that's interesting to me because the Rams are, fighting with essentially the Buccaneers, if the Buccaneers were to win, fighting with the Buccaneers for the 3 versus the 4 seed.
Yeah.
And, and maybe there's an injury issue with Matthew Stafford that they need to, that they want him to rest up and get healthy. But if the Rams follow the 4 seed, you're getting the loser of the Lions-Vikings game. You're getting a 14-win team in the first round of the playoffs, which you can avoid that if you make sure you get the 3 seed.
Yeah.
So I was just very curious to hear that Matthew Stafford's not going to play when I know it's the playoffs. You have to beat everybody regardless. I get that. But you're going to get a 14-win team if you're the 4 seed.
The tough part, though, about this, Michael, I agree with you 100%, just for the record. And I'm not saying there is a big difference there. Obviously, look at the wins and losses, but you're either facing Minnesota, Washington, or Green Bay. Like, no matter what, if you look at, Sean McVay's track record against Green Bay, he's really struggled against the Packers during the Matt LaFleur era.
Yeah.
They lost again this season. I understand they were really hurting every
Yeah, they were really
game.
banged up that game.
But I think people are going to take this a lot of different ways. When you look at how banged up the Rams were at various intervals of the season, and the fact that I think there was a stat now that I don't want to get it wrong, but basically the Rams are one of very few teams that have come back from 1-4 records to win a division, make a playoff.
Yeah.
And they've done it twice now underneath McVay. This has happened twice in his tenure where they've gotten off to these slow starts. So I almost understand it. Now, again, Matt LaFleur made such a brilliant point on Wednesday when he said basically the only thing that can happen, the decision you make, it is what it is. Like, whether you're right or wrong, you have to make the best decision you feel like for your football team. And the results will tell you whether or not it was correct in terms of the public, narrative. Everybody else has the benefit of 2020 hindsight, right? These coaches have to figure out, okay, what is in the best interest of my football team? I'm going to stick with that, and then we'll let the results be what they are.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember the exact LaFleur quote because it was pretty well said the way he put it. But long story short, if this is the route that Sean McVay feels like they got to go with the Rams to be as healthy as possible going into the playoffs, you let it lie. Because, if there's a team that has been playing with house money more than any other squad in the NFC over the last month and a half, it's LA.
Yeah. And I guess I was caught off guard by it because I wasn't aware of something injury-wise with Matthew Stafford.
No.
Maybe I was just ignorant of that or whatever. And so if there is some kind of an injury and they're resting him for that reason, like that, I get it, clearly. But it just, when I first saw the news that Stafford wasn't going to play, I was caught off guard because there is a difference in the seeding that the Rams are playing for.
And then you're going to be going up against a Seattle team that I think still wants to get to 10 wins and prove that we should have been in this conversation for the postseason.
Yeah.
So
couple other questions I want to throw at you. One, who do you think gets the last spot in the AFC?
I would love to say the Cincinnati Bengals.
I think everybody wants to see Joe Burrow with the way he's playing. They want to see Joe Burrow get into the playoffs, but Denver is the one in control.
Yeah.
They're going to be playing a Kansas City team that has nothing to play for, and they're basically resting the vast majority of their guys.
The big guys, obviously.
Yeah,
I think I saw something. I think the Denver Broncos are like double-digit favorites in this.
Yeah.
Approach to Kansas City State.
So if Denver wins, they get it. If the Broncos don't beat the Chiefs, or the Chiefs JV or whatever you want to call it,
the Carson Wentz Chiefs,
the Carson Wentz Chiefs, then Miami is the next team that can take that playoff spot. But now I hear Tua is on the injury report, and his status for this game is not certain.
He's got the hip.
Yeah, he's got a hip issue. So then if Miami were not to get it, then it would fall to Joe Burrow and the Bengals if the Bengals can win their last game, which is they play on Saturday. So then if they win, then they sit and scoreboard watch on Sunday to see if maybe it falls their way to get that final playoff spot in the AFC.
And there is a Pittsburgh Steelers team that desperately needs to win that game too. When we were just talking about momentum entering the postseason, Pittsburgh cannot go into the postseason on this kind of slide.
Yeah.
They have.
If Pittsburgh loses this game, would it be 4 losses in a row?
Correct. Yeah.
I'm sure it's happened before, but
these are all
it's pretty rare for a team to enter the postseason on a 4-game losing streak.
Philly, Baltimore, and Kansas City. Those are not.
The back end of their schedule was absolutely brutal.
The problem is they just weren't overly competitive in those games.
Right.
So
they didn't really make a strong run at winning any of those contests. All right. Well, last one I'll throw at you: Lions and the Vikings.
Yep.
For the NFC North crown, the number 1 seed in the NFC in the first round bye. The loser drops to the 5 seed and has to go on the road as a wild card team. Lions are at home. Both teams obviously, playing pretty darn well. What are your thoughts on how that one unfolds?
Vikings. I have the Vikings winning this.
Okay.
And I'm not just trying to be a hater with the Lions, but I think the Lions, credit to them, that second half they pulled it together against San Francisco. I am very nervous for them with that defense right now. And this is a big test. Win or lose, this is a big test for that defense to see how they're going to match up with all those weapons that Minnesota has.
Yep.
And obviously TJ Hawkinson is back now. He's, you have to imagine this is going to kind of be a revenge game for him on so many levels, going back up against the Lions and Kirby Joseph. I just think efficiency-wise, I don't know if there's anyone in the National Football League doing it better than Minnesota through all their phases of the game. I was so impressed by how they performed. Now, again, they have to go out and do it on the road, but Kevin O'Connell's message was terrific as well this week, saying, they understand they're on the road, but they're not going to be uncomfortable. They're going to go and play their style of football. I think Sam Darnold, if I saw that right, we could talk about the Pro Bowl guys in a second. I think Sam Darnold was he selected as a starter for the Pro Bowl?
I actually didn't even.
I think he was.
Full list.
When you start talking again, I'll confirm it.
Okay.
But, Sam Darnold's playing at an extremely high level. We saw the plethora of weapons they have. For as much as we talked about Jefferson and Addison last week, Jalen Naylor, really helped them win that game against Green Bay.
Oh, big time.
So you asked me that question. My answer is Minnesota Vikings.
I totally agree with you in terms of the concern with regard to the Lions defense. Watching that game on Monday night against San Francisco, with essentially a makeshift offensive line was having its way with the Lions defense until Brock Purdy made a couple of errant throws in the second half that got intercepted by Kirby Joseph. Because otherwise, I thought San Francisco was on its way to matching the 40 points that the Lions put up in that game. So I share your concerns about the Lions defense. It does sound like they may get Alex Anzalone, the linebacker, back from the broken arm.
Goff is the starter. I got that.
What's that?
I really botched that. Goff is the starter.
Oh, Goff is the starter? Okay.
So the other team's guy is the starter. Sorry.
So the Lions may be getting Anzalone back, which would be at least a stabilizing force in the middle of the defense. This is where, and I'm with you in being inclined to pick Minnesota, but this is where I hedge because the game is in Detroit. And I think Minnesota's defense, which is predicated on the pass rush and all those crazy looks that Brian Flores likes to throw at you on third down, that kind of stuff isn't the same on the road as it is when you're at home and the home crowd is making all the noise on third down and the offense is in the silent count and everything like that. I think Minnesota's defense is going to have this is going to be Minnesota defense's biggest challenge of the season, being on the road in Detroit against a Lions offense that looks about as unstoppable as anything right now. Heck, they blew a 4th and goal, passed on a field goal, and did not score on a 4th and goal on Monday night in San Francisco, and they still put up 40 points in the game. Wow. So, so that's just because the game is in Detroit, that's where I hedge. I think it's going to be a whale of a game. It's an incredible way to end the regular season. In the NFL with so much on the line, a division championship and a number 1 seed and a first round bye and all that, and then to sort of launch everything into the playoffs. But yes, you mentioned the Pro Bowl. Shortly before we turn the cameras on here, 3 Packers get selected to the Pro Bowl. Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs, and Rashawn Gary. Your thoughts on how that went down?
I just, first and foremost, congratulations to all 3. Congratulations to the 7 alternates for Green Bay, including first alternate Elton Jenkins. But you can't help but feel great for Xavier McKinney.
Yep.
This is a guy that has not been to a Pro Bowl yet. I think has probably been deserving of it in the past during his time with the Giants, but didn't quite come together. And now here he is, this opportunity, comes to Green Bay, 7 interceptions. Obviously has been such a needle mover and just a tide turner for this defense. And to be able to be rewarded in this way, the way he's conducted himself with the media, the way he's been a team leader from day one, even when he signed here at 24 years old, incredible for him. I also love it for Josh Jacobs because here was a guy that he came to Green Bay with something to prove. Last year was not his best season. And it was definitely not the type of year you want going into free agency.
Sure, yeah. Josh
Jacobs came back and showed I am still every bit the same running back I was when I was the NFL rushing champion 2 years ago. And has done it, has been selfless, has been fought through a lot of different things throughout the course of the year, but has always been available for his team. Those 2 signings, I don't think you can say enough about them and the impact on and off the field they've made. And then also Rashawn Gary getting some respect. I think last year was, kind of a snub I felt like he was a first alternate. Just so happens he doesn't get the call.
Yeah.
This year he does get that opportunity. 38 sacks now in his tenure with Green Bay. I think that's 8th all time since the official statistic in 1982. So a guy that also is on the come up as well.
I think there's something to be said for the player respect around the league for Rashawn Gary, because he was not all that high in the fan voting.
Correct.
And he ends up getting a Pro Bowl selection on this first round, not being an alternate, but like last year, but actually being selected this time. The player vote is part of the process, and I think maybe some respect was thrown Rashawn Gary's way by his peers around the league in terms of him getting this recognition. So hats off to him.
Absolutely. And a guy that's done it the right way, been around here, been accountable. It's been neat to see him come back from that ACL, which was really the only hiccup he's had in his NFL career, and rallied from that. And then also, I didn't realize the stakes were this high. Xavier McKinney gets the starting spot at free safety. That's the only spot. Kirby Joseph not selected to the Pro Bowl. So that was kind of a 1-2. Those two guys were going back and forth in the fan voting.
They were right up there at the top of the fan voting all the way along.
And then the coaches and players put it over the top for McKinney. So again, it shows you how difficult it is to make the Pro Bowl sometimes at some of these positions. It's neat to see X get that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, the two free agent signings, Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs, they both end up going to Pro Bowls in their first year with the Packers.
Big time.
You can't say enough about what those acquisitions have meant to the 2024 Packers and most likely beyond here. So listen, folks, the home of the 2025 NFL Draft is right here in Green Bay, April 24 through April 26 of 2025. So visit greenbay.com/draft25 for more information. And with that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. Wes has a story up on the site about the Alexander news, as well as what's going on with the rest of the secondary. He also has a story on the Pro Bowl selection.
Thank you. I'm sitting here celebrating because I think you're going to toss to the Pro Bowl thing. So that you say Alexander, so I'm like sitting here like fist pumping, and it did fit the vibe. Okay, now say the Pro Bowl part.
You have a story up on the Packers Pro Bowl selections,
Yes.
And later today there will be a story up on the Packers selecting the team winner of the Ed Block Courage Award. So check for that a little bit later on Thursday. That's a story that I was working on this week as well. So for Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.